This is a Carter single action pump from a 1966 Ford Mustang GT350. The car was bought new in 1966, and he had a at the time you could get a kit, Paxton supercharger kit, over the counter and install it on your car, and this pump came with it. Well, this car has sat for quite a few years, and I get the job of freshening up the fuel pump and make it work like new again. We'll stand by and we'll take you through it. If you happen to have one of these, you're going to do this at home or in your shop, and you can order a kit for this, a rebuilding kit for the fuel pump. We have them in stock. All the materials that the diaphragm is made out of is able to withstand any of the fuels that come out today. The valves, you get new valves, new springs. It's the springs for the valves. Diaphragm assembly, you get a new spring for the diaphragm and a new seal. And along with this video, you'll be able to rebuild it. First order of business is to mark the location of the inlet and outlet. Some people like to just take an overhead picture of it. Others make a scribe mark between the top casting and the bottom casting, just so that it goes back on in the same orientation that it was when it came off the vehicle. I want to remove these 6 screws, Phillips head screws. That'll gain you access to the valve area. With those 6 screws removed, you get to the bottom of this. These are inlet and outlet valves. Remove these 2 screws, and these 2 halves will come apart. Sometimes they're a little stuck. This is what's known as a pulsated diaphragm. I can't stress enough the importance of knocking these valves out, and do not reuse them. You're not going to reuse any part of it. Get a punch, usually it's an 1/8 inch, set it right in the center, and lightly tap that, and it'll drive the mushroom part out. There's the spring underneath it, and there's the valve plate that is stuck to it. Remove both of these. That's the seat, valve seat area. Next, you want to remove this spring. The only job this spring has is to keep this arm in contact with the cam. It doesn't have anything to do with the pressure of the pump or volume or anything. It's just to keep that arm in contact with the camshaft. We've got an aluminum plug here. There's a little piece of casting. that covers, keeps the plug from dropping out. You're going to have to cut that off. And just get under the edge of that plug. Just keep tapping it back and forth. It'll work its way out. It'll get to a certain point and get underneath the edge of it. Lift it up. And the sole purpose of that is to keep the pin from sliding out. Get yourself a pair of needle nose pliers. Grab that pin and try and slide it up. There's some rust on that. What I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to persuade it to come out of there. Sometimes you can grab it with a pair of needle nose vice grips and just tap it. Spray it with some WD-40 or whatever you got that's handy. Let it sit for a while. Just keep working at it. It'll come out. Sometimes in order to get this out, you kind of have to give it a shock treatment if using the vice grips doesn't work, but what I've done many times is pushing on the diaphragm to take some of the pressure off so that the arm floats a little bit, and just wrap it on keep tapping it on there, and it'll drive the pin out. Take some pressure off. Make sure you hold on to this diaphragm when you take the arm out, but you're taking it off of in here. As you can see, it's a pretty tough spring, and we're going to replace it with a spring of the same amount of pressure to help feed the supercharger and keep everything working right. Now I'm going to take all these parts over and glass bead them to bring them back to their natural aluminum shade, and then we'll clear coat it, flatten out all the surfaces and make sure that it's a good contact and no leaks, and then we'll be back for some assembly. Now that everything's all cleaned up, clear coated, make sure that all these surfaces are nice and flat, even all the way around, and this one. We can install the valves. Just make sure this area where the valve seats is nice and clean, nice and flat. Set the rivet in there. Don't skip this. Set the rivet in there, set the spring on it, set the rivet in and the plate, and just like you were taking it out, tap, tap, tap. You want to drive that so that the head of the rivet comes through about 1/16 of an inch. The other side in. Let me show you how these valves, it's very easy to go together. Rivet, spring, valve plate. I see a lot of people using that same cone back again. that cone goes down, and it will limit the amount of lift that that plate will get. You'll be able to flow a lot more fuel using these valves as opposed to the original Carter ones. Make sure you cover this area. By covering this, the fuel's going to come up and be forced to go out through that hole and up to your carburetor. Line up the hole, find your reference mark, now the fuel's going to come in through here into this, go down through this section right here. If you flip it over, the screw holes, the threads, will line up. Put the two screws in and crank them down. You want to kind of bring them down even. Don't tighten one all the way and then the other one, just kind of get it snug. Once that's snug, you can bring this one here down all the way. I'll blow air in through here, but you shouldn't be able to suck any air out. Same thing with this, you should be able to pull air out but not blow it in. Going the opposite way, where this is the end, by sucking air out, it should be a dead stop, just as if there was no hole there. That'll tell you that there's a good seal here and the valves are seating properly. Now we can move on to the body. The diaphragm assembly you get in the kit will look like this. For the high performance ones that need a lot of volume and a decent amount of pressure, you'd use one of these. Make sure that it has this orange spring on it. Now what you're going to do is compress this down so that that shows inside, and then you're going to put slide that right into it. Once that's in, you can line up the pin. Make sure it goes all the way in. And it'll bottom out. Sometimes you can, all the Carter pins come with there's a groove in the center. If you get a one of the little clips, you can put that in there. I don't bother with them because this aluminum plug goes in pretty tight, so it can't come back out. A couple of good whacks will knock it in there. Put the spring in. Now you want to line up these holes with the screw holes. Find your reference mark. Line up these holes. A lot of times on these Carter diaphragms, they're a little bit bigger than the diameter of this hole. These in the casting. It's made so that they'll flex right. You want to put in two of the screws. one opposite each other. Line up the holes, put the screws through the diaphragm. Run it about halfway down. Get the other one caught. Run it about halfway down and install the other screws and run them again halfway down. Don't tighten them up all the way. Now with the diaphragm in the relaxed position and you get a couple of these screws halfway down, the diaphragm's been pushed up inside of this casting and it tends to fold the diaphragm down a little bit. Easier to get these screw holes, these screws to go through the diaphragm. If you can't, I suggest you take a like a popsicle stick or something really dull. I got a screwdriver that I use. I just push the diaphragm in a little bit and get the screw through it. It helps. Now get the adjustable wrench, put it on the arm, just for leverage. It's easier to do this because you got to hold it there for a while. Pull the arm up so it's all the way till it can't go any further. You'll see the diaphragm pulling in. Now tighten down at least 4 of these screws. Now what you're doing is you're preloading the diaphragm. It keeps it from stretching, keeps it from prematurely wearing out. If you didn't, you possibly could get a higher pressure reading. And also, when the diaphragm goes through its cycles, if you didn't preload it, it would be sitting up. You tighten the screws down while they're way out of the outside. As soon as this goes through its cycle, it tends to stretch them. It stretches out in those particular areas. Anywhere that there's a screw, it ends up tearing it, and it ends up tearing the diaphragm. With it relaxed, no pressure on it, hold your finger over the inlet and try to pull that up. And you'll see that it'll try to pull your finger in. While it's up, block off the outlet and let the arm go. You'll feel pressure on that. As long as that happens, it's nice and sealed around here. It's sealed around this. The valves are sealed, the plates are sealed, everything works great. Now this particular pump, because it runs a supercharger, this is where the vent is. Normally it would be in this hole. There'd be a hole straight down. Usually they're drilled through the top and through here and runs all the way down inside the body. But like I said, where this is a supercharged one, this is where all the venting is done here. That's it. It's ready. Put the gasket on, put it on the car, go for a ride. It brings it to an end. If you'd like to get in touch with us to order a kit, read the number that's stamped on the flange. There's also a number here which just designates the body. They can have this body with a different arm, different fuel casting, takes different valves, different springs. So this number here would designate, takes into everything. Call it in by that number. Also give whoever answers the phone the application so they can double check it. If you'd like to get a hold of us, our phone is 781-335-8860. On the web, we're at then-now.com. Leave a comment down below. If you find that I missed something, let me know. And hit subscribe. Don't forget the little notification bell. Everybody be safe out there. Thanks for watching.